Welcome to the Crypto Blue Hour. Every week, Charlie and myself get together and talk about emerging trends in the tech space, specifically a lot about AI currently. Let's kick it off. We're going to talk. We're going to get deep in the weeds about building with AI today, and Charlie's got some questions.
So we have a really awesome resource in Erich here, and I think that we have different things we'd like to talk about. We were talking about some things last week. After each of these, we sort of have an idea of what it is we should do the next week, and then we chat about it all week. But today, I wanted to. It's like a holiday week in the United States, a little bit of an abbreviated week for some folks, and so into next week as well. And so I was thinking, like, maybe we change it up and we just sort of use the resource that we have in Erich and hear an insider's perspective, so to speak. And so I want to start with, I have a whole bunch of questions I'm going to ask Erich and then have follow-ups and all this stuff. We'll try to keep it within 30 minutes. But let's start with, I want to just know at a high level, like really simply, how are things going with Prompt Perfect and Perfect Chirp?
Yeah, things are going really well. There's a lot of users. So if this is the first time you've heard about it, I've built two plugins that are available on ChatGPT. Plugins are currently a beta feature, so they're only available to people who use ChatGPT Plus, which you have to pay $20 a month for, and then you have to enable it in settings because it is a beta feature, which just means it's still in testing. But Prompt Perfect has been live for almost 2 months. I'd have to check on that exactly how long it's been, but it's doing really well. A lot of active users, people use it every day. I'm working on building out kind of a social footprint, an email list, and finding ways to teach people how to use it and get user feedback, which is fun. And then Perfect Chirp's been live for a week and a half. Really awesome organic growth so far. It's a plugin. So they're both, Prompt Perfect's a plugin where you type the word perfect and then your prompt in ChatGPT and it automatically rephrases it and gives it way more detail and context so that you get a better response from ChatGPT. And it does it all in like 15 seconds, which is really cool. So prompt engineering is something where the way that you type in stuff gets a better output in ChatGPT from the AI. And this teaches you how to do that by automatically doing it. You can hit a drop down and see what the new prompt looks like. And it's like a very easy way to use ChatGPT better. And then Perfect Chirp, it does a similar thing. You type, write a tweet about, and then whatever you say, it turns that into 10 different options for tweets in different styles and tones. And it's shortened to be really tweet-like. Like it's not a long tweet. It's normally 2 sentences tops. But that's been really good. It's getting used about 100 times a day right now, and I've really done no marketing, which is great. Yeah, and a good amount of some people are using it a lot, which is good. I'm trying to right now figure out. The hard part is everybody's so global. I want to figure out what people like, what people don't like, what people want from it, because I could guess, but actually getting user feedback is going to be huge there. But they're going well. Super excited about them.
When you say a lot of people are using ChatGPT, you had a number for Prompt or Perfect Chirp. Do you have any idea what it is for Prompt Perfect? Is it
It's
thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands?
I don't have the exact user count, but it's being used tens of thousands of times a day, which
How
means,
wild is that?
yeah, like every 2 to 3 seconds on average, it's getting used all day,
That's
every day.
cool.
That's like
Yeah.
sleep and awake. So that is very cool. And a lot of users, I've really wanted to build something that people would use for ages now and that has value. And I've done it.
And that's amazing.
Cool. I'm glad it adds value, and I think if and when it rolls out to all Chat GPT users, it's going to be a very, very useful thing for people who don't quite understand how to use Chat GPT.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. Without a doubt. I think that's probably, yeah. So how are you building it? How do you make it clear how to use these plugins? Because as a ChatGPT Plus user, when I pop in there and I download plugins, most of them don't explain how to use them. And that's the biggest thing that makes no sense to me. So like,
Yeah.
how have you made it user centric in that way? How have you allowed for people to actually understand what this is? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super simple. I mean, you really only have 2 sentences to explain it in the plugin store. If you haven't used
Mhm.
it, it's literally just a little window where you install, and it gives a brief description. Now, if you have it installed and you ask ChatGPT how to use it, it can give you more details. But
Hmm.
really, the way the plugin store is set up now, there's no like landing page like you would have on an iOS app where you could go into details, link out to tutorials, look at customer reviews.
Yeah.
Those aren't available. I'm assuming something like that is something that OpenAI wants to build, but it's just such a new product that they're more focused on, I think, figuring out if it works. So the way that I do it is I make it super simple. I say in
Yeah.
it, type, get the perfect prompt every time, or type perfect to get the perfect prompt every time. It's not the best description, but people tend to get it. For Perfect Chirp, it says write or start your prompt with write a tweet about, and then insert an idea to get a banger tweet in less than 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
And
it's
can
really
you
just,
define banger? I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
banger tweet is one that really hits, you know. It's like you read it and it shoots a firework off in your brain. That's what we're trying to do.
um, Thank you. I didn't know what that meant. And also wondering, we were talking about monetization around Perfect Chirp. Has anybody paid yet?
Yeah, we have 3 paying customers right now,
Crazy. That's
which
awesome.
is awesome. Yeah.
It is
I'm
awesome.
I'm still working out through that. I'm trying to figure out what people like, how often people use it, what makes sense for a free versus a paid plan each month, and striking that balance. But it's very cool. People are natural. I've done little to no marketing, and there's already people starting to pay, which is cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, if you don't already, you should follow Prompt Perfect on Twitter because it is funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You've been really milking the Zuckerberg Lex
Those aren't from the
Friedman.
Farm Perfect account. Those are from my account.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're very funny.
Yeah.
You didn't do any from Prompt Perfect like that?
Not with Zuckerberg.
Okay,
But
okay.
I've done some interesting memes from Prompt Perfect. There's
Yeah.
actually a cool plugin called Meme Generator, and it's very easy to build memes directly in ChatGPT, which I've used that a few times. I actually used it for a reply to OpenAI announcing that they're opening an office in London, and it's been viewed like 7,000 times and has like 30 likes, and I got like 15 followers from it.
That's
Where I was like,
awesome.
yeah, and I generated the meme in, I mean, 30 seconds is wild.
It's a different plugin.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Meme generator.
Love it. Okay, cool. So that's a great update on what you've been building and how those things are going. So what about so we were talking for a moment before the pod about some high level stuff, and so I want to take a step back and before we get into the different LLMs and the different organizations who sort of lead those big ones, what do you see, like what's the builder's perspective right now? I know that you're in a lot of private groups with different folks who are building different things. You're working on the conference. You have a lot of calls every day. I talk to Eric. He's like, "Oh, did I tell you this? Like, oh, did I tell you I spoke to this guy who works at this massive company who's also building this for that company?" It's like we're moving so fast. It's really crazy to me. So, do you have any sort of like, we don't want you to give away anything crazy. And I'm sure that you're signing some NDAs with some of these folks, but anything at a high level that you're seeing, like trends in terms of what people are building or themes at all, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's an overarching trend that it still feels very early in that people don't know exactly what to build. There's a lot of small teams building a lot of different things. There's there's
Interesting.
focus on plugins for ChatGPT, which people don't even know. It's a very early stage beta feature. There's an opportunity that ChatGPT just gets rid of it, which I don't think they would, or I don't think they will. They could if they wanted. They don't have to keep it. So it's like, do you
Yeah.
lean in on making these, or do you like go focus on building your own app? There's a lot of
With the
people build,
API, you mean?
yeah, with the
Got
API
it.
or with other
Interesting.
software. You see a lot of back and forth. Google released some information on building, I think, with their suite of tools. I haven't really looked into it because I've been busy as hell. But I think that now you can build similar apps with Bard's model, which is interesting. And then, so then the question becomes like, what are you going to build? How are you going to build it? There seems like a lot of people rushing to try and build something that makes money. And I think there's some apps that are probably making decent money right now, but it's still, you know, that doesn't guarantee that it's going to stick around.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
a lot of people haven't quite figured out what the future of these apps is going to be like. Is everybody like, how many $10 to $20 a month subscriptions can you pay to an AI software? I don't
Hmm.
think many people will do even more than one. Like, you
Yeah.
don't really want to pay a lot for stuff. And so there's so many things you can build. Question is, how do you build an audience? How do you turn it into an actual company? I think the future of what that looks like, everybody's kind of uncertain on. People are just trying to build things that are cool. I think the people who are really focusing on unique use cases for like what AI does will do really well. But they're not necessarily doing well right now. They're kind of just tinkering around, building things that interest them, following
Hmm.
kind of the fun, creative problem solves there. And I think I've said it before, but like the best thing to do is just find an issue, something that you think you could solve with AI and then build for that. Like for me, generating a tweet, ChatGPT is not good at it. Find a solve for that. Prompting's hard. Find a solve for that. If we have a friend who has an e-com company. It's like, you want a customer service agent that's a chatbot. Find a solve for that. And
Hmm.
building things like that is the way to go, and not worry as much about how much money you can make this month from building it.
Yeah.
So there's some people doing that, but then there's also people stressing and trying to raise VC money. I think a we'll see a lot more AI products continue to be built throughout the year, but I would say 90 to 95% of those might not be here in 3 years,
Yeah, for sure. I heard Chamath Palihapitiya talk about how he thinks that there's going to be a shift in this next 12 months or 18 months around the size of the ticket size for VCs. It's going to go from these large numbers that we've seen sort of inflated. Um, we have a buddy who's thinking about working at a relatively late stage startup that does international. It doesn't matter what the startup is, but they are late stage and they've raised a ton of money and they're a unicorn. Um, And to me, it seemed like they're trading at just such a massive, massive valuation that it doesn't really make sense. I understand that they've solved a significant problem, but like some of these valuations just seem very inflated to me. And I'm not an expert; they just are very large numbers. And I've worked at some startups that have gone to become one went on to become a unicorn and is still in existence. But ultimately, I think that had happened in a way that didn't really make sense. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't work there anymore for a reason, And so, um, but yeah, so the thing with the ticket sizes that Chamath was saying was that there's going to be a lot more tickets in smaller quantities, and so there's going to be a lot more of them with less zeros at the end of them because there are so many interesting things being built, but the teams behind them are only 4 guys, 2 guys, 10 guys, or people, not guys like gender specific, but people in general. The teams are smaller because there's so much more that you can do and you're so much more powerful. It's ChatGPT and these different LLMs are allowing people to become 10x efficient, 10x larger breadth of knowledge scope. And that's just incredibly powerful. So it's going to be really interesting to see. That might mean more failures. That might mean that we go from a 70% failure rate at startups to 90% startup failure rate, which is really interesting. Um, but also, I feel as though it's almost like there's this interesting thought around like groceries that I've sort of like been fixated on for a very long time. Like since I was in the Peace Corps, it's like it's funny to me that there are these massive grocers that don't allow for there to be fresh produce in local areas. Like certain areas have better blueberries because they're local to that area, and certain places have better bananas because they're local to that area. And so, although bananas is a bad example, or sugar cane is another bad example, those are monopolistic now. But like a lot of fruit, I want to get the natural, like it's peach season. I want to eat some peaches. Um, where I live, there are a lot of them, but ultimately, you can't go to a lot of places they don't have them. And so I wonder if there's like a better model, like a cooperative model where people are going to a grocery store. It's a little bit more local, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but things are more fresh, more nutritious, less pesticides, more organic options, those sorts of things, which allows for better health and longevity. Whereas there are these massive chains that then sort of have these supply chain logistic things that they go through and they're able to cut margins and make things cheaper, but at the behest of the health of the individuals who are eating that food. But when it comes to something, it's sort of, I find an analogy, maybe it's a huge stretch, but there's an analogy there with these massive companies that are monopolistic, but there's only one search engine. There's only one sort of place to go to look for things or query things on the internet. Maybe there's going to be a world in which there are a lot more communities. There's not just one place that you can go and ultimately find these, like a social media thing or a different sort of solution to your whatever it is that your business problems might be. There might be a lot of different people who build chatbots for people who have customer success businesses, and they don't need to scale to 100,000 users or 100 billion businesses. They can scale to 150 and do it exceptionally well with a white glove service, and then
Yeah.
that's their own little business. So I'm interested to see how that sort of affects the way that software grows. Because there's also this emphasis on open source, and open source inherently scales, but ultimately it's not as scalable because the incentives are not as aligned with capitalism. Um, so it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit of a rant, but I'm interested. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot more companies doing well, SaaS companies like software solutions and AI that make enough for people to be very happy, but not so much that they are buying rocket ships and going to them,
Yeah,
going in outer space, Bezos style. Like, and I
yeah,
think that's very cool.
Yeah, I agree. It was cool to see Snowflake, the SaaS company, has made has made a few really strategic AI acquisitions, and they're really leaning into the idea that people can create visualizations with their data now. And it's I think that those are the sort of businesses that will do well. Also, Nvidia is like, they like create all of the hardware for this stuff to be possible, and so it's really interesting. People are worried that they're going to create a monopoly around it. So but let's transition into, I want to hear what it is that you think about these different LLMs. And like, obviously there's a lot of open source stuff happening on Hugging Face, which we've spoken about at a high level in previous episodes. Their CEO was in front of Congress last week testifying. Interesting to read his comments. He's really like sort of banging the drum that open source and the ethos behind it and the community behind it and the way that sort of it is sort of like this organic thing that happens from software engineers and builders all over the world is very American in and of itself. Like at its core, that is American. I thought that was an interesting point. He's French. I think that's a really interesting point. It certainly resonated with me. It's hard to get a take on Congress sometimes, but yeah. So I know that you also had mentioned Google and OpenAI, and Microsoft is obviously sort of a massive shareholder in OpenAI's technology now, and they leverage that. But with Hugging Face as well, like, what's your take on that? What are people saying? The builders saying about that? Are there people who are aligning themselves with one at sort of like the cost of others, or are people more open to it? What's your take from a builder
Yeah, I'm
perspective?
way heavy on the OpenAI side. It feels like you have Google, which is a very closed place, and they're very good at what they do. Then OpenAI, which is a middle ground of they're governed by a nonprofit, so that there's not this crazy entity. They purposely build solutions that people can build on top of or use, and they're very transparent with like the ways you can build on top of it, which are cool. And then a Hugging Face, which is way like heavy on the open source side. So it's almost like a sliding scale. And I think
Yeah.
people have the option to do what they want. For me, I like it right in the middle right now. It's good, and I don't know. OpenAI is doing a lot to democratize what they're doing. They had like I forget, $100,000 or $300,000 grant for figuring out like a democratic solution to figuring out how to fine tune models or like what should be allowed. A lot of problems
Mm,
with the bias that people kept talking about, like oh, it shouldn't say this about politicians, or it shouldn't have a certain take on this, or this is something it shouldn't talk about, that are kind of in that area where a lot of people have different varying opinions. uh, that's a really hard thing for everybody to solve, and like a Google is just going to figure that out themselves and make decisions. OpenAI is trying to build solutions for that, and then a Hugging Face is probably going to open source it, which is also interesting.
hmm
um, so from a builder's perspective, I would say like a Hugging Face and an OpenAI are where most people are actually building, because you can
hmm
see what happens. I think Google wants to own most of the means of production, whereas I think OpenAI honestly is the best spot to build. And
Cool.
the people that I interact with are building there, they have really great documentation. I mean, ChatGPT Plus, it utilizes GPT-4, is one of the most amazing things I've ever worked with.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder. I need to read more about some of the announcements recently from Google. It's really easy to see these sort of like tremendous or like exciting headlines on Twitter or like just tweets from folks about like, oh, this is happening. It's another thing to dive into it. I use Bard. I like Bard. But I find myself going back to Bing if I want to ultimately use the web, right? Because I'd like to be able to use plugins and the web, and so I think that there's a future in which Bing Chat allows for you to do that, right? So for on my phone, for example, I have the OpenAI or the ChatGPT app downloaded, which is great, but it's only GPT-4 if you're a Plus user. It doesn't allow for plugin usage or web access, and so I've also downloaded
I
Bing Chat.
actually yesterday
Oh,
enabled
no way!
not plugins, but web access.
No way. Okay, cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Um, That's cool. That's brand new. That's because I was using it 2 days ago and it wasn't allowing me to. But there is a Bing Chat app, so you can download Bing Chat and then you're using GPT-4 with access to the web inherently, which is pretty freaking cool. That
That's
one is
cool.
a little buggy. A little buggy. It doesn't work perfectly. Oftentimes it just sort of like renders an error.
Yeah,
But we know firsthand that the Google teams are working on the back end to integrate all of the plugins, and there isn't any indication that there's a tiered service at Bing, right? Like it's all one. So you don't go in there and have to sign up for anything or even to pay for anything.
yeah,
You go in there and you use it, and then they're integrating with the existing plugins, or many of them at least.
Yeah.
including Prompt Perfect. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets rolled out. And if it's rolled out to everybody who uses Bing Chat, I don't know the user metrics there, but if there's no barrier to entry and you're able to just use it, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty incredible. It'd be really interesting. That'll be fun to watch. That could break the servers
Yeah.
for
It's gonna
Prompt
be a
Perfect,
lot
you know?
easier, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prompt Perfect gonna be some issues we'll have to worry about.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's exciting. I think Bing is gonna. We're doing this thing where like OpenAI releases ChatGPT. It's fucking wild. They released GPT-4. It's fucking crazy. Bard comes out. Everybody's like, it's so cool. Microsoft makes a huge announcement. They're like, oh, this is a game changer. And we're just like, everybody's building a lot of very cool things. And it's almost like everybody's getting their turn for the spotlight, and the media or like the Twitter themes are all about how they're leveling up. When in reality, it feels like we're all just like slowly moving towards an improved experience with these all three of their chats.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it goes because yeah, Bing's plugins will be another big, huge bump. Google, I haven't talked to them and they haven't specifically reached out to us, but I know that they're also doing plugins for Bard, and talking to other plugin developers. So
Okay.
that will be another thing where they're like, now Bard has plugins and people will be talking
Yeah.
about Bard all the time. So it's cool. There's ample opportunity and time to build really cool things, and all these platforms are building things that we can build for. Like there's
Yeah,
just going to
exactly.
be a whole new uh, industry, which is very, very cool.
Yeah. Are you had mentioned earlier that you thought that ChatGPT might roll back plugins? Is that something that people are talking about, or is that just like a random thought
I
you
think
have
the
that's
one
not
guy is
actually?
worried about it. Yeah, I mean, the worry is that sometimes they're buggy. OpenAI has had originally a very small team on it, and now they've grown to, I think they hired 5 people, extra people, which is great. But like they didn't feel like some of the developers felt like they weren't really leaning into it. OpenAI has 300 employees. It's very small.
Yeah,
They just announced yesterday they're opening a London office and they're hiring more. So I
saw
think
that. Yeah.
part of it is this fixed profit company setup. People just expect different things. Like they expect now that plugins are live and they have a bunch of developers that they'd have more information on where the future of it's going. You kind of have to fill in the blanks for that yourself.
Hmm.
I don't see them rolling it back, but they have the opportunity to if they don't think it's
Yeah,
worth
of
it.
course.
But OpenAI is more about they want people to build on top of it because it makes it better.
Yeah,
Like
it creates their moat. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it makes it way better. And also it enables people to do like some of the stuff that will get built. And Sam Altman famously a few weeks ago, not famously, but said that plugins haven't found product market fit, which just means that they're so good that everybody's telling other people about them. New people are coming in and getting plugins. Part of that is it's really small. It's a beta feature. It's you have to install it yourself. You also have to be a plus user. So I think they're kind of letting it suss itself out, let people keep building. There's over 500 plugins now on ChatGPT, which is a big amount. They still need
Yeah,
to fix some things, and we still need to build better plugins so that there's really cool stuff. Um, but I don't see it going away. I'm leaning into it more.
I don't either. It just doesn't make sense for me from a business perspective. Like there might be overhead, but it's not like they're. Yeah, I don't know. It's like yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. It improves the functionality, and also there might be something happening with Bing or Microsoft on the back end where they're like, you guys can market this better. I don't really know. I think that they're very symbiotic,
Yeah,
and having Microsoft on your team is. I'll tell you one thing. I never ever had Bing on my phone. I didn't even have a Microsoft login until 3 months ago when all this
yeah,
sort of came to fruition for me. So that in and of itself is interesting because now I'm a statistic in terms of like the upward and to the right angle that Microsoft can probably talk about at their next board meeting. So
yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. That's
So
exciting, man. Well done.
a suite of tools that'll have plugins and GPT-4 built into it. So like if you use Microsoft Word, Office, Calendar, stuff like that, I think they're calling it Copilot, but you'll have this Copilot where you can do things on all these apps, which is cool. It's
Yeah,
going to
it's
be
gonna be
wild.
wild. I can't wait. Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah.
Um, all right, man. Those are all the questions I had. We could even, I mean, I was telling you beforehand, we could go through approximately 4.5 hours of conversations like this, but then you'd have to just sort of hang out with us all the time. This is what we talk about.
No,
So,
then
especially
you
with this
wouldn't
thing.
come back next week if we gave it all away now.
um, So yeah, what's your hot take, man? Or let's yeah, what are we missing? What's next?
I don't have a good. You already said it. Once
Yeah,
the
I'm sorry.
hot take's been said, I can't create a
Yeah,
uh,
true.
a transition. But
Yeah.
think of one for next week.
Yeah, I got so my hot take this week. I was talking about. We were wondering if we had any beforehand. Mine is I'm I'm in my hometown, so I'm hanging out with a lot of people that I grew up like the older generation that I grew up caddying for are the guys that I'm now playing against in tournaments and golf as I get older, and I'm seeing them again years later, and a lot of them look pretty ragged, a little beat up, and so. I my hot take is that you are what you eat, and you got to be respectful to your body, and you got to try to be thoughtful about that. I think that the hot take is, try not to ignore the fact that your mental health and your physical health are sort of the most important things that you have that you personally have control over.
Yeah.
And so it's important to take those things really seriously. And it doesn't have to be miserable. A lot of foods that are fresh might be sort of cast as not tasting good, but that is not the case firsthand. I'll tell you from firsthand experience. So
Yeah. I kind of
that's my
forget
hot
that
take.
people eat shit, like don't cook their own meals all the time. Like
Yeah,
I cook my own lunch and dinner, or we cook our own lunch and dinner. Like I don't know, 8 out of 10 meals per week. We're batting a
yeah,
pretty good average. I forget that people
yeah,
don't do that. It's kind of wild.
yeah. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's my hot take.
I like it. Eat healthy, people.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right, my hot take is, I saw Dalton Caldwell, who's works for Y Combinator, had this interesting tweet yesterday that shook me a little bit. Not shook me, but just it was a banger tweet, if you
I
will.
love it.
Um,
Yes.
it was like if you listen to the same music over and over again, it's basically like if you're the type of person who only listens to the same music over and over again, it kind of like stamps out your creativity. And I've been
Hmm,
in a rut. I love music, but also I get in this rut where I don't want to find new music, and I'll just
of
listen to this.
course.
And like the last 2 months, I've kind of been on a repeat cycle. And he said that, so I was like, hell yeah! So I started jamming out to like some of Spotify's, like new finds playlists and some genres
Cool.
that I don't normally listen to. And same on my bike ride today, I was listening to some weird rock music and some like indie folk that I wouldn't
Awesome.
normally be listening to. And like, I don't know any of the names of the bands, but it's fun and it's good. It feels good for your mind. So I think you should just go listen to different music, you know?
I like that.
For,
Cool.
for a while.
Get out of your comfort zone. I like that. I don't do that enough either. I have one CD in my truck and I put it on every time I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You got to spice it up, dude. You got an
Yeah, so
auxiliary
true.
cord? Plug into the phone.
Yeah, exactly. No, I have Bluetooth. I'm just lazy. I love that CD. I like when I bought the truck, I knew what CD I wanted, so I like went and got it.
Yeah. Great.
That's a good point, though. I like that. I like that a lot. Oh yeah, man. Well, shout out to Josiah Soren. We'll be back for more updates next week. And yeah, well done, Eric. It was awesome. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude,
Proud of
definitely.
you
All right,
too.
cool. I don't know why, but I do have a good mustache. That's worth being proud
Proud
of.
of the
I'll tell you
mustache and the glow. It's
that. All right, cool. All right, ciao, everybody. We'll see you next week.